other way to interpret the timing of that law and the fact that it was not grandfathered for those who were participating in the leadership contest. There is no other way to interpret that law as a deliberate attempt to undermine the credibility, the integrity of the Liberal Party of Canada.
A informative speech. It's the kind of speech which I myself would have given if I were looking forward to contesting a leadership race in the next year or so, and was going to rely upon a large amount of donated cash. Etienne was being fair and thoughtful when he put forward this finance legislation. You know, we should be clear about what was going on here. The legislation that was put forward was going to go into effect, although there was some discretion on the part of the Chief Electoral Officer, going to go into effect on December 31st of the year 2003.
Oh, that's right.
And it could, however, any race that might be underway could be declared to go before or after. The Chief Electoral Officer chose to cause the old financing rules with unlimited donations and unlimited spending to apply. And that was not done out of fairness. That was done in order to ensure that the member from Newmarket Aurora, who at that point was running for the leadership of the Conservative Party, would have a huge advantage over the current Prime Minister in that leadership race. It was a complete abuse of process, Mr. Speaker, and no one should misunderstand what was going on that occasion.
So a decision was made to limit individual donations to $1,200 a year, but it's really no better if you allow individuals to make loans to get around that limit. That's what's very worrisome, Mr. Speaker.
Most recently, of course, in a number of standing committees with respect to their cheap and dishonest talk about carbon pricing. Now, I'll admit that mounting a campaign for office, some people will have advantages. Family and friends support early funding startup for nomination ballots.
I have one very brief question, Mr. Speaker. He says he's against it. I'm going to ask him whether he's actually going to show up and vote against it.
Some of the major reasons why this is a bad piece of legislation for the country. And although
questions and comments, the plug by this bill is big enough to drive a Mazda truck through, is what I've heard earlier in this debate. And that was a graphic illustration of how the current regime can be abused by those who would seek to abuse it. Because I would ask my colleague another very simple question: when is a loan not a loan? And big money and election financing undermines democracy, bastardizes democracy, if you will, and makes it less fair for those who seek political office.
I don't think they've thought this through at all, Mr. Speaker. I think this is about the NDP cozying up with the Conservative Party, trying to make a point, trying to make a cheap point.
But I am inviting the other House, when it sees this bill, to review it with this perspective in mind, that are demonstrably justifiable, then this provision that prohibits individuals from lending to political campaigns is not constitutionally enforceable. And but I actually ask the other place, when and if they have a chance to look at this bill, as I'm sure they will, if we pass it at third reading, I hope they will look at it. Now,
several of the Liberal leadership candidates from their previous leadership campaign had missed a deadline, the 18-month repayment deadline, and were seeking extensions or some other form of repayment options with Elections Canada. Now, the member, in response to my comments, stood in this place and went on at great length, I would suggest, Mr. Speaker, to suggest my comments were in error, that there was really no 18-month repayment requirement. I would point out to the member that according to Elections Canada itself, it states so quite clearly, and I would quote from the Elections Canada website, where it says contestants are required, not may or perhaps, they are required to pay any outstanding debts within 18 months of the end of the contest. And of course, the end of that contest, that 18-month period, in the case of the Liberal leadership campaign, came in early June of
the honourable member is still misleading the House and the public. He has used the term debt. The word used in the statute is a claim.